Now Hollywood is race-swapping murderers.
Mr. Reagan.
Recently, a show on Netflix came and went, but it got a lot of attention for a variety of reasons. Firstly, it's a show about a shocking subject, a teenage criminal brutally murdering a little girl. Secondly, the show highlights the dangers of the manosphere movement and the misogyny that movement promotes.
Dad, you're not reading what they're doing. It's a call to action by the manosphere. 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. You must trick them because you'll never get them in a normal way.
And lastly, it's all based on real crimes in Britain. It also attracted a lot of attention and controversy on X because the boy in the show is white.
Look at me now!
But here's the thing. The real-life crimes that this show is based on were not committed by white teenage boys. They were all committed, all of them, by black teenage boys. In the year 2000, a 10-year-old Nigerian boy, Damilola Taylor, was murdered by two 16-year-old brothers, Danny Preddy and Ricky Preddy. In 2013, a 15-year-old girl, Ellie Ann Ondam, was murdered by her boyfriend, Hassan Santamu. This murder in particular was mentioned as one of the several killings that inspired Stephen Graham to create the Netflix show Adolescence. In 2004, a 15-year-old boy, Chris Donald, was held down and stabbed multiple times, then doused in gasoline and burned alive by 5 members of a Pakistani gang in Edinburgh, Scotland. The reason? He was white. This was not a murder by a mentally ill person or someone on drugs or in a violent rage. This was a calculated act of violence by Pakistani men against a white teenage boy. Naturally, the British media neglected to properly report this story. In 2023 in Dublin, 3 young children were viciously stabbed by an Algerian immigrant, Riyad Bouchakr, and this set off massive riots in Dublin. These were, of course, white Irishmen tired of seeing their country infiltrated by violent criminals, and they were demanding that this mass immigration stop. Riyad was 50 years old. He was no teenager. But the reason I bring the case up is that there were children involved, and no photographs of Riyad are available online. Try looking him up. You cannot find a photo anywhere. This is an unfathomable decision on the part of the Irish authorities because it just enrages the population even more. We all know what the authorities are trying to do here. It's the same thing that filmmakers are trying to do with this show. They're trying to hide what this monster looks like so they can sanitize the image of the immigrant population. If Hollywood and the Irish government had their way, they would have everyone believe that the only ones capable of violence in our world are straight white men. Everyone else is an innocent little lamb. The most high-profile and most heinous of the more recent murders of children in the UK was the July 2024 Southport stabbings near Liverpool in the northwest coast of England. The killer was this guy, Axel Rudikbana. He was 17 at the time of the stabbings. Initially, the British media posted this image of the murderer, again trying to sanitize the monster and the violent culture from which he came. 9 children and 2 adults were treated for injuries from the massacre, and 3 children were killed. 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguiar, 6-year-old Baby King, and 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stancombe. And there are many other stories of brutal violence in the UK, of black and Asian men attacking white women and sometimes children. But it was this killing in particular that was the reason, I think, why so many people were enraged by the race swapping in the Adolescence Netflix series. Do teenage boys in the UK ever murder anyone? Unfortunately, yes, there are monsters everywhere. But white teenage boys in the UK murder at a rate of about 0.66 victims per 100,000. Asian teenagers, which is the classification that the British give to Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, and Indians, is about 2.5 per 100,000, which is about 3.8 times higher than that of white teenage boys in Britain. And black teenagers in the UK murder 14.29 victims per 100,000. That is 21 times the rate at which white teenage boys murder in the UK. That is astronomical. And here's the crazy thing. In this show, they're not only swapping in a white boy as the murderer, they presented the dangerous influence that caused this boy to murder the young girl as the manosphere. And look, I don't really care for the entirety of the manosphere. I don't think the dominate your woman message is a good one at all. I'm an extremely dominant personality in real life, and I completely understand why people think that this is helpful in attracting women or making women fall in love with you or whatever. But you know what I do when I am dating a woman? I try very hard not to be so dominant. I tone it down. I'm gentle. I'm kind. I treat my girlfriends extremely well. And when you get these nerdy guys who can't get girls, they're socially awkward and they are naturally submissive, and these guys try to be dominant in their relationships, I think it just devolves into being abusive. So no, I do not really like the entirety of the manosphere. But as far as I'm aware, the manosphere has never caused anyone to murder women. So look, this is not just ordinary race swapping with this series. This is not making Snow White Colombian. This is a much more pernicious thing. This is, simply put, racism. They are defaming straight white men by applying this vicious level of violence that doesn't actually exist to white boys. But it's worse than that, because this vicious level of violence does exist in Black and Muslim cultures in America and in the UK. And by race swapping the murderer here and by shifting the blame from Islam and Black culture to the manosphere online, they're actually ignoring the real cultural evils that have actually compelled these Black and Muslim men to commit murders in real life. They are demonizing a seldom violent culture whilst sanitizing far more violent cultures. This is what we would call a scapegoat. These filmmakers have witnessed various acts of violence from Black and Muslim men influenced by Black and Muslim culture on the news, and then they've rewritten it as a fiction, reframing the criminal as a white teenager motivated by the manosphere. This is as hateful and as racist as a work of fiction could possibly be. Just imagine if this had been done the opposite way. Imagine that there were high-profile cases of white teenagers committing heinous crimes, and then the TV version was shifted to blame Black guys or Muslims. It would spark a new wave of BLM riots. But from the perspective of the left, this kind of blame shifting is good, and it's essential because they hate straight white men. They are vile bigots of the worst kind. Attention, retirement savers. JP Morgan predicts a 2025 recession as tariffs have rattled the markets. And according to Forbes, 2025 recession risks just increased significantly. And that's the thing about the global economy. Markets are just darn hard to predict. And that's why thousands of hardworking Americans are turning to the award-winning precious metals company, Goldco. And if you are worried about market instability or a potential recession, my partners over at Goldco are offering you a free 2025 gold and silver kit. Plus, you could get an unlimited instant match in bonus silver for qualified accounts. Call 844-696-GOLD or visit MrReaganLikesGold.com. Find out how you can help diversify your savings tax and penalty free today. That's 844-696-GOLD or visit MrReaganLikesGold.com. A friend of mine from college, a Christian conservative white girl, she called me the other day and she said that this show looked great because it warns people about the potential evils of the manosphere. Apparently she saw some interview with the director explaining the show, and she totally bought everything that this guy said. When I explained to her what the creators of the show were really doing, she was naturally appalled. And so I told her that she really has to broaden her news exposure to include more conservative news sources because she's really being brainwashed by the left. At first, she reacted defensively. She said that she doesn't just listen to leftist media. So I made a bit of an educated guess. I said, well, I'm guessing that you saw this interview with his director because you were doom scrolling on Instagram, correct? And she sheepishly admitted, yes. And that is such a huge problem these days. A lot of people, especially younger women, they're getting their news from TikTok and Instagram. And these platforms, they are full of quick clips and memes from leftists. And we often say that the left can't meme, and that is absolutely true. But that's in the context of the raw battleground of X. But their propaganda is still working on TikTok and on Instagram. Because conservatives, we don't have a big presence on these platforms. They almost have an ideological monopoly. And so, if that's where somebody's primarily getting their news, they will be brainwashed. Now, obviously, we've all seen the atrocities that are Black Captain America and half Colombian Snow White. And I think the attacks against Rachel Zegler's looks are a little overblown. She is a beautiful girl, but it is her venomous lack of respect for the original film that really pissed people off.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time. She's not going to be safe with the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Shocker. People don't really like narcissistic feminists ruining their beloved childhood memories. And so, naturally, Snow White is the worst performing Disney film in decades. Another show from the UK, Inside Man, starts off with this skinny white hooligan harassing an innocent woman of color. Now, this woman's just minding her own business on the London Underground, and this guy starts pushing his pelvis into her face, and then noticing another girl taking a video of him, he forces her to delete the footage, or maybe it's a picture, I don't remember. And then, as another woman is recording him, he turns his white male misogyny on her, but she's too smart for him because she's live streaming.
It's Facebook Live.
And so this guy slinks away, defeated. Boy, that strong, intelligent woman really did teach that evil white man a lesson that day. I was actually so annoyed by this scene that I posted about it. I wrote, yeah, because white guys in Britain harassing women of color is a totally real problem. And the weird thing here is that they're not actually fooling anyone. Nobody watches this and thinks, yeah, white guys are really awful. Most people are basically programmed at this point to dismiss this kind of nonsense as the predictable propaganda of the radical left in the media. No one is actually convinced that this is real life. Maybe a few ridiculous feminists who are also trying to perpetuate this delusion who, they're like given a fist pump. But normal people just watch this stuff to see how the story progresses, and they accept the reality of what they're watching on the screen with the same fidelity as they might do whilst watching a scene with a unicorn or a leprechaun. This is left-wing fantasy fiction, and everyone knows it. Video games have also gone insane, which has been widely reported, but in particular, Assassin's Creed. It's been more or less played out, so I won't get into the details here, but basically the folks writing the new Assassin's Creed game, it's called Assassin's Creed Shadows, they decided it would be best to set the game in feudal Japan and that they should include a completely absurd African samurai. Now, this character, Yasuke, was a real African who lived in Japan, and he was maybe like a bodyguard or something like that. But from what I can gather, he was more of a freak show spectacle than a warrior. But of course, Ubisoft had to try to cram a black guy into a game about feudal Japan because that's what diversity really means. Black guys, women, and LGBTQ. You can't just let Japan be Japan. You need to muddy it up for your diversity politics nonsense. But what I love about this controversy is that they're not race swapping white people this time, which is, that's bad enough. But now they're trying to jam diversity into East Asian history, which is frankly just as annoying. But the point is that this is very clear evidence to me that this really isn't about racism, as our detractors so often claim. It is about a rejection of the DEI cult, a rejection of the incessant compulsion of the woke leftists to cram black guys and gay guys and transgender and women into every place they do not belong in the history of the world, in order to satisfy their bizarre radical left fantasies. While writing the script for this video, I looked up the new Far Cry game, another Ubisoft game, because that actually is personally my favorite game series. And they have absolutely messed that up as well. So the new game is going to be Far Cry 7, and it looks like the bad guys are some kind of vague allusion to Trump supporters who are called in the game the Sons of Truth. Really, guys? If you're gonna make us the bad guys, at least call us something cooler than the Sons of Truth. And look, I'm sure both of these games are going to do reasonably well because Ubisoft is just really great at game mechanics, mission design, and story arcs. But honestly, they could make games that are so much better. They could make games that are legendary. It is so easy to make entertainment that is blockbuster level successful. And look, Ubisoft, you guys are not going to like what I'm about to say, but this is the truth. All you have to do is make games with straight white men as the protagonists. And all you have to do is tell universally attractive stories. Tell an underdog story. Rescue the girl. Good versus evil. These are simple stories that, told well, always work. I went back and I played like Far Cry 3 or something. It was the one set in, I think it was Thailand. It's got a straight white male protagonist. He's got to go save the girl. And let me tell you, even though it wasn't as graphically spectacular as the later games, the game mechanics weren't as good, it was worse in almost every single way. I actually liked it the best. It's probably my favorite ever Far Cry game. Simple stories told well. They always work. And look, I don't know why white men are so universally appealing as character leads in stories, but they are. But I do think it's less about race and more about culture. Danny Glover, Eddie Murphy, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Wesley Snipes, James Earl Jones, Carl Weathers, Billy D. Williams, Mr. T, Bill Cosby before we knew he was a creep, and millions of other black leading men have been accepted by white audiences in the 1980s and the 1990s. But here's the great thing about all these actors. They weren't hired primarily because they were black. They were hired because they were charismatic actors who were extremely watchable on screen. But they became successful back when the primary goal of filmmakers was to entertain instead of to propagandize leftist political ideas. Today, in every film and TV show, the most heroic characters and those with the best hearts and those who have the most power always have to be a woman or a black guy or a gay guy or immigrants or transgenders or Muslims or some combination of those things. All to progress the leftist, feminist, Marxist, LGBTQ messaging from the left. And now they've taken things much further. They are reframing vicious, violent murders against children committed by black and Muslim men influenced by black and Muslim culture as crimes committed by white teenagers influenced by the manosphere. And so I think that there are three things that need to change in our society. One, we need to stop being afraid to include traditional Christian values in movies and TV shows again. Two, we need to stop being afraid to cast straight white men, or at least stop hiring specifically for DEI purposes. And three, conservative content needs to infiltrate TikTok and Instagram. On top of these easy changes, we need to figure out ways to get traditional conservative ideas back into public schools and universities. I was talking to a girl the other day who's currently in college, and she is absolutely obsessed with getting good grades. And I think that's great. This will probably lead to a very good, secure job at a major corporation or a law firm or a hospital or something. But this is a very different approach than what guys have. Guys are not typically as worried about grades as they are about, how do I take what I'm learning here and apply it to making money or creating an empire? And so guys aren't just digesting and regurgitating to get good grades or to get a good job. They're thinking critically and creatively. And this is a major reason why I think so many young women are leftist and so many young men are conservative. Men are much more likely to challenge what they're being taught, and women are much more likely to accept it all non-critically. Challenging academia will be extremely difficult, but it's absolutely critical that we do it, because I'm sure there are people who have excellent ideas about how to do this. We just have to get those ideas out there and then execute them. In the meantime, let's at least change the culture of the entertainment industry. I mean, this demonization of the straight white man is just culturally destructive. It's extremely boring. And you know what? It's losing the industry billions every year. Hopefully a few savvy, powerful producers will finally figure out, hey, you know what? If I make projects that are tailored to conservative straight white men, I'm going to make a fortune. And things will begin to shift. Jerry Bruckheimer, Jon Favreau, and James Gunn seem to be the only ones that have figured this out, but James Gunn appears to have been slipping leftist propaganda into a few of his projects lately, so I don't think he really gets it, actually. But when a few more of these powerful Hollywood producers figure out that there is a gold mine just waiting to be exploited, I do think we will probably see a shift. Honestly, I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm kind of shocked that it hasn't happened already. Anyway, I hope that it's soon. Well, that's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much. That is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.